In this video, I'm going to talk to you about strengthening your memory. Hi, I'm Tansel, 4-time Australian memory champion, helping you learn faster and better. If you think this channel is helpful, please subscribe to it and like and share the video as well, because it really helps me out. So thank you for that. Now, getting to the topic of making things more memorable, we often look at things that stick in our mind and understand that they're in our mind for a reason. Why? Because they could be emotionally charged, whatever's in our mind. It could also be that there's extreme amount of exaggeration or color or an incident that occurs that evokes some sort of emotion, as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to tap into this and find out how can we use this experience to help us remember better. Let's take a look at remembering names, for example. Now, that's a common problem that people have, is forgetting someone's name. And I have a lot of videos on that already. If you haven't watched them, you can check them out on my channel. But remembering name is something that we think we should be getting straight away, but we often miss out on the opportunity to remember someone's name, or we just forget and we blame ourselves that we have a bad memory. Or we blame the situation. Whatever it is, we can make that more memorable by developing a story around that memorization. Now, I talked about remembering names using linking and connection and associating the word of the name, but how do you make that stronger? This video talks about making stronger connections so that you're able to then remember a lot better. And that's important. And the reason for that is that why bother using memory techniques if you're just going to forget? So the aim of this video is to help you become a better memorizer, someone who can make something so strong that you can remember it for a long time. And we're not just talking about long-term memory as well. It can be things for short-term. The aim and the premise is simple. The premise essentially is making the connection a lot more stronger. And we do that through a whole bunch of things. And one of the things that really stands out to make your memorization stronger is using emotion. For example, if I take this stapler, nice pink stapler, if I take this and visualize it, yep, it's a stapler. I can see it in my head and it's a static image. The problem with that is you're just seeing an image. To make things more memorable, you have to really get in there and involve some emotion. Now, how can we take a standard stapler and make that more emotional? Well, we could staple things. Okay, so you're getting the experience out of it. We can touch it, feel it. We can look at the staples and touch the staples. But how do we make it more memorable? Right, memorable things are usually the things that are not so common. You look at television. What percentage is negative? And you probably think, okay, it's quite high. Right? It's definitely more than 50% negativity, way more than that. And the reason for that is there's things happening on there that don't occur on a daily basis. So if you look at the news is essentially reporting things that don't happen on a regular basis. Have a think about that. They're not going to report on things that happen normally in day-to-day life. They're not going to report on Joe Blogs got his coffee this morning. What great news. They're not going to report on that. If he spills coffee on himself and burns himself and ends up in hospital, that might make the news. Who knows? So it's out of the regular everyday occurrence that you're able to really trigger that memory. Now, I'm not saying you can't use normal things, right? Everyday run-of-the-mill things to remember. But in order to really strengthen your memory, it has to be out there. And this is where creativity comes in, because training your memory helps to build up that creativity, and vice versa. If you're more creative, then you can make these stories and connections. So I'll give you an example of the stapler. We had the vision before. We said a few things like, feeling it, and you can see what it's going to do maybe when you use it. But how about stapling your finger? Now, can you imagine that? You go, staple your finger. What's that going to feel like? Do you see what I'm saying? So now we're evoking emotion because you might be able to feel that because the brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. So if you staple your finger, you might draw some blood, you might feel the pain, right? The brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. That's why during, say, horror movies, people get really scared. Well, they know it's a movie. Why do they get scared? Because the brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. So by involving that sort of emotion, I'm not saying it all has to be pain and suffering. You can have complete joy, right? You picked up the stapler. Let's just pick it up. You picked up the stapler and think, oh, this is so beautiful. It's pink. I'm so excited. Now, obviously that excitement has to be genuine. You can't just say you're excited about something and really you're not. Like, your brain knows. But if you're obviously using that emotion to your advantage, then that helps strengthen that association and it helps strengthen your memory as well. Now, the important question from all of this, okay, Tansel, I get that. Emotions are great. How do I use it for my everyday life? I'm reading documents. I'm reading emails. I'm doing work. How can I make this exciting? Right? And this is a common question that gets asked. The way to do it is by really breaking down what you're looking at and encoding it in a way that can make it fun. And I mentioned in my other videos, and the clients that I work with generally, is I get them to read terms and conditions when I'm teaching them speed reading. And the reason for that is you could take something so boring and dry, yet make it so exciting and fun by applying simple memory principles like visualization and creating silly stories. So if you read something like, this contract must be signed by April such and such and such date, let's just take that as an example. What would happen is that if you read that normally, it might just go past your brain. Right? You think, okay, that's it. It's not exciting. It's neutral. But to make it more exciting, what you can do is this contract. Well, you can think of an really old piece of paper or parchment or whatever it is with some old writing on it. It's written with fountain pen. This contract must be signed by April. So you think, okay, April is around Easter time. You're thinking of the Easter Bunny, right? So the Easter Bunny is signing the contract, something like that. So that makes things a bit more memorable, exciting. Maybe not for you, but you can find your own thing. For me, I look at that and go, oh, wow, there's images there, and I start to remember it. All right, let's look at another situation. A classic one for me was one of my weakest skills was listening skills. Whenever I'd listen to someone talk, I'd probably forget almost straight away, and that was terrible because I was in my early 20s. You'd think that you'd be alert then, but no. What I would do once I learned the skills is as soon as someone was talking, I was visualizing what they were saying. Now, you don't have to visualize things as is. So if they're saying, look, last week I went out to a restaurant, you don't have to visualize them essentially going out to a restaurant. You can visualize them working at the restaurant, right, and cooking food. Now, you probably think, well, that's not what happened. Well, it doesn't matter because you're still getting the key facts right of them being in the restaurant. Let's take another example of using emotions to make things more memorable. Let's say you're presenting something, you're giving a speech. Now, we know that the best speeches are the ones that tell a story and engage the audience. That story, if it's got a little bit of emotion, if it takes people on a journey, if it essentially tells that story, then people are hooked. If people are giving a lot of facts and data and presenting a lot of that stuff, well, that stuff's abstract. It doesn't make any sense. So if you are presenting any of that abstract bit of information, you can tell it in a way that's in a story. Now, you don't have to actually tell a story, but you can say, look, these figures represent such and such. So that's sort of level one. And then getting down from that, well, what this means is that blah, 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 blah. And if you're presenting that in a visual way, because people connect with visual imagery, present that in a visual way, then it becomes more memorable. I studied my master's degrees at university, which everyone does, and a lot of the materials we got was from PowerPoint slides. So I'd be looking at the PowerPoint slides and analyzing them. And when I'd be reading them, there'd be information from one slide relating to information on, say, the next 5 slides, or relating to something else on a totally different slide. And this sort of throws the brain off a little bit. So what I did was I mind mapped those slides so you could see all the information in one area, which is really powerful stuff. So if you haven't checked out mind mapping, go check that out, and I'll definitely make more videos on that. But going through those PowerPoint slides, you can clearly see that the information is abstract. It doesn't give you any story behind the meaning of what those terms and what those definitions and what that particular scenario, case, whatever it is that's presented, the information is giving you. We don't know. So what I did was I developed those stories even further as I was reading them. So I extended it out a bit further in my mind. That's how I learnt out of class. And when I got into class, I had a deeper knowledge of that. So if you're into learning, what you can do is you can look at the notes, you can look at the resources, the PowerPoint slides, whatever you're getting, visualize the content, but see if you can put that content in context with a story that you're creating. By doing that, you can then really hone in on the skills to make it more memorable and learn from that. And that's a really powerful tool and technique to use, and I'll probably go more into specifics in other videos on how to do that. This is just a video on giving tips. I'll go into detail as I do in some of my other videos. I go onto the whiteboard and start writing out a few things, which I love doing. So to make things more memorable, emotions is one way. We're connecting emotions, whether it's positive and negative. If it's neutral, you might struggle to remember something if it's neutral. So make it either really positive, really negative, and also try and connect it to some sort of a story, because that's what really connects. And once you understand how that connection of the story works with emotion, then you can really use it to your advantage in the most boring, dry content you can imagine. Give that a go. Any questions, please feel free to contact me on my website or message in the comments below. I'm happy to help. If you found this really helpful, please subscribe to the channel because I'll try and make more of these type of videos. If you like the video, like it, share it as well to other people that you think might benefit. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.